She thought the baby would save them. But the first crack didn't come with a scream. It came with a pause. Emma had rehearsed the moment a dozen times in her mind. The soft smile she would wear, the way she'd hold out the tiny test with trembling fingers, the exact second his eyes would widen, not in fear but in joy. She thought of how his arms would wrap around her waist, how he'd whisper something like, "We're really doing this," and how just like that, their problems would feel smaller. Like maybe love was still enough. But that's not what happened. He stood still in the doorway, grocery bag in one hand, car keys in the other. She hadn't even planned to tell him that night. But something about the way the light hit the kitchen counter, the silence in the house, the way his eyes barely met hers. It all pushed the truth out of her mouth faster than she expected. "I'm pregnant." 2 words. Heavy. Delicate. Alive. He blinked. Set the bag down. The apples rolled out and one hit the floor, but neither of them moved to catch it. "For how long?" he asked. 7 weeks. There was no anger in his voice, no warmth either. Just calculation, like he was running the numbers, backtracking time, measuring consequences. Emma tried to smile. "It's early, I know, but I've been thinking, this could be a good thing. A reset. A way to bring us back." He sat down slowly, like the floor had become too far away. "We weren't in a place for this." "I know," she said, walking toward him. "But maybe this is the sign. The thing that makes us try again. For real." He looked up. And that's when she saw it. Not panic, not confusion, but distance. "Emma," he said carefully, "I don't think this changes anything." Her heart slowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've been falling apart for months." "I know," she said quickly. "But people rebuild. Couples fall and get back up. Maybe this is what makes us stop drifting." He stood, walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, then turned it off again without using it. The silence between them stretched like something physical. "I don't want to lie to you," he said, "or pretend I'm ready for something I'm not." She folded her arms over her chest. "You're saying you don't want this baby." "I'm saying, I don't think I can be who you need me to be. Not as a father, not even as your partner right now." The word "right now" stung more than it should. It was vague, cowardly. A back door left open in case he wanted to return someday. Emma felt her chest tighten. "So that's it? I give you the biggest news of our lives and you just opt out?" He turned to her then, his voice low but steady. "This isn't a punishment, Emma. It's honesty." She stepped back. "Honesty would have been months ago when you stopped looking at me like you used to, when you started leaving early and coming home late. Honesty would have been before this moment." "I didn't know how to say it," he said. "I kept thinking we'd find our way back." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "And now that there's a baby, now that it's real, that's when you decide to leave?" "I'm not running," he said, but she knew better. He was. That night, Emma sat in the hallway, knees pulled to her chest, the bathroom light still on, the test still on the counter. He had gone to stay at a friend's place. Said he needed time to think. She didn't cry. She just stared at the space he used to fill. The worst part wasn't that he left. It was that she had really believed the baby would bring them closer. That something so innocent, so full of beginning, could somehow close the wounds neither of them had named out loud. But instead, it had been the mirror. The thing that showed them, without excuse, exactly how far apart they already were. For the first few days, Emma moved through her apartment like a ghost in someone else's life. She made the bed without thinking, brushed her teeth without tasting the mint. She kept expecting the door to open, for him to return with a suitcase, in one hand and remorse in the other. But the door stayed shut. The space he left behind didn't echo. It just felt unfinished. She had never lived alone. Not really. Even when he was distant, he was there. His keys on the counter, his shoes by the door. Now it was only her shadow that followed her from room to room, and even it felt unsure of where to stand. When she went back to work, people noticed the change. Her closest friend at the office, Carla, tilted her head slightly the moment Emma stepped in. "You okay?" she asked. Emma nodded too quickly. "Just tired. You look pale." "Morning sickness." Carla smiled gently, her eyes wide. "Wait, are you—" Emma exhaled and nodded. "Yeah, 7 weeks." "Oh my God," Carla whispered, her face lighting up. "That's huge. I'm so happy for you two." Emma felt her throat tighten. "Thanks." Carla paused, confused by the lack of warmth in her voice. "Wait, does he know?" "He knows. And he's happy?" Emma looked down at her. "Coffee." "He's not here." The silence between them was immediate. Sharp, Carla's smile faded. "I'm sorry." Emma shrugged. "It's not your fault." No one else at the office knew, not officially. But Emma could feel it, the way conversations lowered when she passed by. The way someone would start to ask about him, then pull back. The questions weren't spoken, but they lived under every glance. Had he left because of the baby? Was she really going to do this alone? She didn't owe anyone answers, but she couldn't stop imagining the ones they were thinking. Back home, the apartment began to shift. She moved his things into the closet. Not out of resentment, but necessity. Every hoodie draped over the chair, every cologne bottle left. On the sink had become too loud. She didn't delete his number, but she didn't call either. Instead, she read books on single motherhood, on prenatal care, on how to handle the moments when your child asks about the parent who didn't stay. She underlined sentences, wrote notes in the margins. Not because she expected to use all of them, but because learning gave her the illusion of control. Baby became more than a future. It became her anchor. Each time the nausea hit, she whispered, "We're still here." Each time she passed a couple holding hands in the park, she said, "We'll be okay." But there were nights when the walls didn't believe her. Nights when she stared at the ceiling and wondered if she had mistaken attachment for love. If maybe, deep down, she had known he wouldn't stay, and tried to change the ending before it happened. Was she wrong to hope, or just human? She didn't reach out to her mother. Their relationship had always been strained, full of caution and comparisons. Her mother had never believed in fixing relationships. If a man leaves, she used to say, "You let him." But Emma didn't want that kind of strength. The kind that slammed doors and called it healing. She wanted the kind that could sit in the rubble and still build. One afternoon, she received a message from him. Just wanted to check in. "Hope, you're doing okay." No apology, no depth. Just 7 words that didn't mean anything, and somehow meant too much. She typed a reply, erased it, typed again, then left it unsent. She wasn't ready to be a version of herself that pretended casual was enough. Later that week, she went to her first prenatal appointment alone. The nurse smiled kindly, asking questions she wasn't prepared for. "Partner, coming later?" she asked. Emma shook her head. "It's just me." The nurse's eyes softened but didn't pity. "You're not the first. You won't be the last." That sentence sat with her the entire ride home. She wasn't alone in this kind of heartbreak. There were others who had sat in that same chair, others who had smiled through ultrasound photos with no one's hand to hold, others who had learned that love doesn't always leave quietly, and sometimes it doesn't leave all at once. Sometimes it lingers in the hallway, in an unsent message, in a memory you didn't choose to keep. That night, Emma stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Her belly didn't show yet, but her eyes did. They were no longer looking for him. They were looking for her. It had been almost 4 weeks since she told him. 4 weeks since the hallway became the place she said goodbye without using the word. The baby had become more real with each passing day. Not just in the symptoms, but in the quiet moments, where Emma would catch herself talking out loud to someone who hadn't arrived yet. She had started writing letters in a notebook, not for anyone else to read, just for herself, for the baby, for the part of her that still believed some form of peace could be built from chaos. She wrote things like, "Today I bought you your first blanket. I was scared this morning, but I'm still here. Your dad and I didn't work out, but you are not a mistake." That last one made her pause, because even writing it, she didn't fully believe it yet. Not because the baby wasn't wanted, but because the betrayal still lingered. Not the betrayal of him leaving, but the betrayal of what she had convinced herself to expect from love. Then came the knock on the door. It was late, nearly 10 p.m., the kind of hour where good news rarely arrives. She opened it slowly, half expecting to find a neighbor or a mistake. But there he was, Daniel, wearing the same jacket he used to drape over the kitchen chair, hair uncombed, eyes tired. "Can I come in?" he asked. Emma didn't move at first, then nodded. Not because she had forgiven anything, but because she needed to know why. He stepped in like someone visiting a house he used to own but no longer had keys to. He looked around, noticing the subtle differences. The missing photos, the empty counter, the blanket on the couch. "I won't stay long," he said. I needed to talk, and I didn't want to do it over text." She crossed her arms. "You could have done it a month ago." "I wasn't ready." Emma raised an eyebrow. "And you think I was?" Daniel sat down. "I know you weren't." The room was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the heartbeat in her ears. She didn't offer tea. She didn't ask how he was. She waited. He cleared his throat. "I panicked when you told me. Not because I didn't want a child, but because I didn't think I deserved to raise one." Emma blinked. "What are you talking about?" He looked down. "I've been going to therapy. Started about a year ago secretly. I didn't tell you because, honestly, I was ashamed. And the deeper I went, the more I realized how much I was avoiding things. Commitment, vulnerability. You." She stayed silent. "I was convinced I'd mess it up," he continued, "that I'd become the kind of father who's physically present but emotionally absent. The kind of partner who makes promises out loud but breaks them silently. And when you told me, it wasn't the baby I was scared of. It was the weight of being needed." Emma sat across from him. "So you left because staying meant being seen?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." She looked at him for a long time. There was no anger in her voice, just sadness. "Do you think I wasn't scared too? That I didn't look at that test and wonder how I'd survive? But I stayed. I didn't run." "I know," he said. They sat in silence. Then he reached into his coat pocket and handed her something. A folded piece of paper. She opened it slowly. It was a sonogram, not of their baby, of his own heart. A printout from a recent therapy session, showing the stress pattern his doctor had found, an irregularity caused by prolonged anxiety and suppression. "I've been sick for longer than I knew," he said. "Not physically, but emotionally. And when you gave me news that required me to be whole, I realized how far from whole I was." Emma didn't know what to say. For so long, she had painted him as the villain in her story, the one who left when love required courage. But now, he didn't look like a villain. He looked like a man who had been drowning silently. She stood, walked to the window. The city lights blurred slightly through her tired eyes. Behind her, Daniel didn't move. "I'm not asking to come back," he said finally. "I just needed you to know it wasn't about the baby." "It was never about the baby," she turned. "Then what was it about?" "My fear of becoming my father." Emma stepped closer. She had never asked about his father. He never offered. She now understood why. "Did he leave too?" she asked. "No," Daniel said. "He stayed, but he never showed up." And somehow that hurt even more. Emma sat down again, this time beside him. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to listen. "Are you getting better?" she asked. "I'm trying," he said. They stayed like that for a while. Two people who once shared everything, now sharing only air and history. When he left, he didn't ask for updates. He didn't make promises, he just said, "Thank you for letting me speak." And Emma replied, "Thank you for saying something." That night she wrote a new letter in her notebook. He came back, not to fix anything, just to tell the truth. And somehow that made everything clearer. Maybe healing isn't about returning. Maybe it's about finally being honest. Emma didn't sleep much after Daniel left. Not because she was angry, but because her mind kept rearranging the conversation like puzzle pieces that no longer belonged to the same picture. There was no relief, no immediate closure, just a strange quiet inside her, like an orchestra had stopped playing mid-song. She sat in the kitchen at dawn, hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea, staring at the sonogram he'd left behind. Not of their child, of his heart. It felt symbolic, somehow, that he had shown her his damage instead of his promises. People always talked about healing as if it were something soft. But healing, Emma was starting to realize, was jagged, sharp-edged. It scraped away everything you thought was true and forced you to look at the rawness beneath. And now, for the first time, she wasn't just asking what she wanted from Daniel. She was asking what kind of mother she wanted to become. The baby kicked that morning, a soft flutter, barely more than a whisper inside her belly. It brought tears to her eyes. Not because it hurt, but because it reminded her that something was happening with or without permission. Life had already begun, and it wouldn't wait for clarity. Later that day, she met with her midwife. "You seem quieter than usual," the woman said gently as she listened to the heartbeat. "I had a visitor last night." "The father?" Emma nodded. The midwife smiled softly. "Was it a good visit?" Emma didn't know how to answer. It was necessary. They didn't say more. But after the appointment, as Emma walked past the maternity wing of the hospital, she stopped at the viewing window. Inside were 3 newborns, bundled in pink and blue, sleeping like they had never known the weight of being born into someone else's story. She whispered, "You'll have your own story." That night, she made a decision. Not about Daniel, about herself. She would keep the notebook, but not to fill it with pain. From now on, every entry would be a message for her future child. Not about the father, not about abandonment, but about the kind of world she wanted them to see, even if it started in pieces. She started with, "You weren't the reason we fell apart. You were the reason I chose to begin again." The next few days moved differently. She cleaned the nursery, not to distract herself, but as a way of reclaiming space. She painted one wall a soft, earthy green, the color of beginning. She hung a mobile with stars, moons, and one tiny sun in the center. Every movement, every little act, became a way of telling herself, "We're going forward now." Then came the email, from Daniel. Subject line, "Not expecting a reply." She hovered before clicking it. Inside it read, "Emma, I know I said everything I needed to in person. But there's one thing I didn't tell you because I didn't want it to sound like an excuse. It's not. I wanted the baby too. That night, when you told me, I was terrified. But underneath the fear, I felt something else. Something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time, hope. I ran because I didn't trust it. But I see now, that wasn't your burden to carry. Whatever happens between us, I just needed you to know. You are the strongest person I've ever known. And that child is lucky to have you." No signature. Emma closed the laptop slowly. She didn't cry. Not This time, because there's a difference between healing and hoping someone will return. She wasn't waiting anymore. She was walking. That Sunday, Carla stopped by with a box full of baby clothes. "I went a little overboard," she laughed, placing the box on the table. Emma smiled. "They're beautiful." Carla looked around. "It's really coming together in here." "It is," Emma said. "I think I'm starting to feel ready." Carla hesitated. "You know, you don't have to do this alone." Emma raised an eyebrow. "I mean, not romantically, but emotionally. You've got people, Emma. Me, my sister. My mom even said she'd babysit." "When the time comes," Emma laughed. "Your mom doesn't even like dogs." "She likes babies," Carla said, grinning. "Tiny humans are her soft spot." Emma felt warmth rise in her chest. It wasn't the same warmth she used to feel from Daniel's hand on hers. It was different, less romantic, more rooted. Like maybe family wasn't always built the way you imagined. Maybe it was built by choice, by presence. Later that night, Emma returned to the notebook. "Today, I smiled without pretending. I felt okay without needing someone else to say I was. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it means I'm healing, and I think that's enough for now." It rained the night Emma went into labor. Not a violent storm, just a steady rhythm against the windows, as if the world was gently waking her up. She had been timing the contractions for hours, half in disbelief, half in awe. It was happening. The moment she had imagined, feared, and longed for all at once. She had planned everything. The hospital bag packed a week early, the birth playlist, the route to the clinic. But none of it felt real until the water broke and she realized there was no turning back. Life was already moving forward, pulling her with it. Carla arrived 15 minutes later. No questions, just action. "You ready?" she asked, slipping on a hoodie and grabbing the keys. Emma nodded. Her eyes were glassy, but not from fear. They drove in silence, except for the sound of Emma's breath. Deep, controlled, breaking, occasionally when the pain spiked. Carla squeezed her hand during the red lights. "You've got this," she said softly. "You were always the strong one." At the hospital, everything blurred into a flurry of nurses, monitors, and quick voices. But through it all, Emma held on to one thought. "I'm not alone. Not this time. Not ever again." Hours passed, then the baby arrived. A daughter. She didn't cry immediately, just opened her eyes like she had been watching the whole world from the inside, and finally decided to enter. When she did cry, it was soft, almost like a question. Emma held her to her chest and whispered, "Hi." Just that. No speeches, no declarations, only the word that meant, "You're here." "And I'm still me." Later, when the nurse asked for the name, Emma hesitated only a moment before speaking it aloud. Maya. It wasn't a name she and Daniel had ever discussed. It wasn't from a book or a family tree. It was a name that had come to her one night in a dream, a name that felt like beginning. The nurse wrote it down, smiling. "She looks like a Maya," and she did. Soft eyes, curious brow, tiny hands that kept trying to curl around Emma's finger. Daniel didn't come. He hadn't been told, not because she wanted revenge or distance, but because she knew, now more than ever, that presence wasn't about biology. It was about choice, and Emma had made hers. Still that night, back in her hospital bed, she opened the notebook and wrote a final letter. The last page. "Dear Maya, you won't remember this night, but I will never forget it. You didn't fix me. You weren't born to save me. You were born for yourself. And that's the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. Your father didn't stay. And one day, you'll ask why. When you do, I'll tell you the truth. That he left, but not because of you. That sometimes people are broken in ways love can't repair. And that none of it means you were unwanted. You were always wanted, always chosen. Maybe he'll come around someday. Maybe he won't. But you'll never have to wonder if I stayed. I did. I stayed. For you. For me. For the life I thought I had lost and found again in your heartbeat. Love, Mom. The next morning, as sunlight broke through the blinds, Carla entered with coffee and a quiet smile. She sat at the foot of the bed, watching Maya sleep. You look like someone who's been through something holy, she said. Emma smiled. I have. There were no fireworks, no grand finish, just the soft sound of breathing, the warmth of a tiny body on her chest, and the knowledge that, for the first time in months, Emma wasn't searching for what was missing. She was living what had arrived, and that was more than enough.